But nobody ever finished a book and said,
"Wow, that author knows what a semicolon is and how to use it."
Welcome back to my channel. I'm Tara East, writer, scholar, teacher, and author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. Now, if you've been following along for the past few weeks, then you already know that I've been doing a series that is all about writing rules. I started off this series with Octavia Butler's 9 Rules of Writing, followed by Natalie Goldberg's 7 Rules of Writing. And last week, I unpacked Kurt Vonnegut's 8 Rules of Writing. So we've pretty much got like all the numbers covered by this point. But in this week, I'm actually going to be uncovering Stephen King's 20 Rules of Writing. But don't worry, I have split these 20 rules into 2 different videos, so we'll have a part 1 and a part 2. Before we dive into Stephen King's rules, I would like to acknowledge that we have been living through a really weird time and that your writing practice may have been disrupted as a result because you're dealing with concerns that you ordinarily don't have to deal with. And though the restrictions are loosening up and we are able to do a few more things than we have been able to do over the last little while, I did want to create this series as a way to support you and to inspire you if and when you want to get back into writing. Now, I've been starting each video in this series with a bio of the author whose rules I'm unpacking, but I'm pretty sure you know who Stephen King is, so I think we can just jump straight to it. Rule number 1, first write for yourself and then worry about the audience. This rule echoes a point that I made in last week's video. It is so important that you write the story you most want to read. King argues that your first draft should be written for yourself, and I totally agree. Now, what he means by that is not only are you writing the story you want to write, but you should also be allowing the story to take you wherever it wants to take you. Now, King actually has a twofold meaning with this statement. Firstly, he absolutely wants you to write the story you want to write. But secondly, he's encouraging you to allow the story to take you wherever the story wants to take you. Don't put on your editing hat until you start your second draft, until you start the revision process. This is where you can take out all the stuff that doesn't actually need to be in the story. Rule number 2.
Don't use passive voice.
Passive voice is when you turn the object of an action into the subject of a sentence. So for example, Mandy hugged Claire is active, while Claire was hugged by Mandy is passive. Can you see the difference? Mandy's action, the act of giving a hug, is diminished when you use the passive voice. Rule number 3, avoid adverbs. Now, King has become famous for this rule, yet he openly acknowledges that of course he too uses adverbs. You'll notice that this rule is avoid adverbs, not ignore them. Adverbs can be a sign of lazy writing. But if you do your work up front, then you really don't need to add this additional description. So think about it. If you have 2 characters who are fighting and one leaves the room in a huff, you need to create the drama that leads up to their exit so that you don't need to say, he slammed the door forcefully, because the reader already knows that your character is angry. Rule number 4. Avoid adverbs, especially after he said and she said. Now again, notice that this rule is to avoid adverbs, not ignore them. So sometimes it is okay to say he said softly or she said loudly, but most of the time a simple he said or she said is all that is necessary. Rule number 5. Don't obsess over perfect grammar. As a writer, I do believe that you need to know the tools of your trade, but I can also appreciate that if you didn't learn grammar in school, or if you were taught incorrectly, or if you simply didn't pay attention, then learning those rules as an adult can be startlingly difficult. It is important that you learn the rules of grammar so that you can properly edit your own work. and so that when you break a grammar rule, you're doing it intentionally. Now, that being said, your primary motivation for writing should always be to tell a good story. Bad grammar may put a reader off a book, but nobody ever finished a book and said,
Wow, that author knows what a semicolon is and how to use it.
Rule number 6, the magic is in you. This rule speaks specifically to the
Fear of writing.
King believes that most bad writing is really rooted in fear, and he advises aspiring writers to be bold and fearless in their storytelling. You'll notice that this rule kind of echoes Natalie Goldberg's rule of loosen up, which we covered in last week's video. As you'll remember from that discussion, writing is a vulnerable act, but it would suck to be at the end of your life and to think that you never got to bring forth all of those treasures that are buried deep inside of you simply because you were afraid. Rule number 7, read, read, read. Interestingly, this particular rule didn't appear on either Vonnegut's or Goldberg's list, but reading is essential to writing, regardless of the genre or form. Unlike film or theater, there are no secret strings being pulled behind the covers of a novel. Everything you need to know about how to write a novel is literally right there on the page. If you want to see the strings,
All you gotta do is slow down and look for them.
Rule number 8, don't worry about making other people happy. We're all leading busy lives, and few people can make writing their full-time gig. So sometimes you have to say no to opportunities, invitations, or events because you need to make time for writing. Naturally, this is gonna upset some people, and that's totally okay. If you've made the decision that you're going to write a book, then you need to honor that commitment and follow through until its completion. Sometimes you have to say no thank you to a momentary pleasure in order to say yes to your lifelong dream. Rule number 9, turn off the freaking TV. Okay, I added the freaking part. Now, I rarely watch TV, but because of the recent lockdown, I have started to watch some TV and some movies because it's a way that I can spend time and connect with my loved ones. And I'll tell you what, I wasn't missing out on much. Binge watching Netflix is a time suck, and it will not support your dream of becoming a writer. Now, if you want to write film or TV, then that's a totally different story. But if you're a novelist, then that time spent watching TV would be much better spent reading or writing. Rule number 10, you have 3 months. So King believes that it should really only take 3 months to write the first draft of a novel. Now, I do want to acknowledge that this rule is highly prescriptive, and yes, King has written a lot of novels and experienced a wild level of success and won many awards. But that's because he figured out a process that works for him. What we can take away from this rule is the idea of deadlines. Create a self-imposed deadline for your first draft is a great way to create a sense of accountability and to keep yourself on track. And you can even double this if you buddy up with a writing pal. There you have it, guys. That's the first 10 rules of Stephen King's 20 rules of writing. Now, don't worry, I'll be covering the other 10 rules in part 2 in next week's video. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to hit the subscribe button to support my channel. And if you want even more writing advice, you can head to taraeast.com. I have over 150 writing advice blogs on the website covering a range of topics, so I know that there will be something on that site there to support you. And if you're looking for a new read at the moment, feel free to pick up my mystery novel, Every Time He Dies. It currently has 4.83 stars on Goodreads, so check it out. While you're there, be sure to join my weekly email newsletter, because when you do, I'll send you a free cheat sheet called The 7 Ways to Stay Motivated as a Writer, the perfect complement to this video series. Know that you can also follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and of course, Facebook. Thank you so much for watching again, guys. It really means so much to me that you show up here every week. Stay safe, stay calm. and keep writing. And I'll see you next time.